In the late 15th century, Rome was not only the center of religion, it was also the center of power, wealth, and dangerous political games. At the heart of this world stood a man named Rodrigo Borgia. When he became pope in 1492, he took the name Pope Alexander VI. His rise shocked many people in Italy. Some admired his intelligence and political skill. Others believed his election showed how deeply corruption had entered the highest levels of the church. But one thing was clear to everyone. Alexander VI did not behave like the traditional image of a quiet, spiritual pope. He behaved more like a powerful prince. The pope had children before becoming head of the church, something that many church leaders tried to keep hidden. But Alexander VI did not hide them. Instead, he openly promoted his family and gave them positions of influence. His most famous children were Cesare Borgia, Lucrezia Borgia, and Giovanni Borgia. To Alexander, family loyalty was everything. He believed that power should remain within his bloodline, and he used the authority of the papacy to strengthen the position of the Borgia family across Italy. Rome at that time was filled with powerful noble families competing for influence. Families like the Medici, the Orsini, and the Sforza all fought for control of land, wealth, and political alliances. In this dangerous world, marriage became one of the most important political tools. Alexander VI arranged marriages for his children to build alliances with powerful families. His daughter Lucrezia became especially important in these plans. She was young, intelligent, and known for her beauty. But her life would soon become surrounded by rumors and controversy that would follow her name for centuries. Many people in Rome watched the rise of the Borgia family with suspicion. The Pope's enemies believed he used bribery to win the papal election. Others accused him of turning the Vatican into a place of luxury and political intrigue. As the Borgias gained power, their rivals began spreading dark stories about what happened behind the walls of the Vatican. Some of these stories were shocking. They claimed secret parties, immoral behavior, and disturbing relationships within the Borgia family itself. One rumor in particular became famous across Europe. It accused Alexander VI, his son Cesare, and Lucrezia of being involved in deeply scandalous acts. But historians today still debate these accusations. Some believe they were exaggerated propaganda created by political enemies who feared the growing power of the Borgia. Others argue that the Borgia court truly was filled with corruption and moral scandals. The truth may lie somewhere between these two extremes. What we do know is that the Borgia family lived in a time when politics was ruthless, and reputations could be destroyed by rumors as easily as by swords. Lucrezia Borgia, in particular, became a symbol of these stories. To some writers, she was portrayed as a dangerous woman involved in poisonings and dark conspiracies. To others, she was a victim of political games played by powerful men around her. As the years passed, the legend of the Borgias grew larger and darker. Stories spread across Europe, describing secret feasts, hidden crimes, and shocking betrayals. But separating truth from rumor is not always easy, because in Renaissance Italy, power and scandal often walked side by side. And as the Borgia family reached the height of its influence, the rumors surrounding them would only grow more intense. As the power of the Borgia family grew in Rome, so did the whispers that surrounded them. The court of Pope Alexander VI became one of the most talked about places in Europe. Diplomats, nobles, and church officials traveled to the Vatican every day, and many of them carried stories back to their own cities. Some of those stories were about politics and power, but others were darker. Many people believed the Vatican under Alexander VI had become less like a holy center of faith and more like the court of a powerful Renaissance prince. Wealth, luxury, and influence filled the halls where religious leaders once focused only on spiritual matters. Grand banquets were held in the papal palace. Important visitors were entertained with music, dancing, and elaborate feasts. Rome itself was already famous for its festivals and celebrations. But when the Pope himself hosted these events, they attracted even greater attention. Some observers admired the beauty and excitement of the court. Others believed it was a sign that the church had lost its moral direction. At the center of many of these rumors stood Alexander's children, especially his daughter Lucrezia Borgia. Lucrezia was still very young when she first became part of her father's political plans. In Renaissance Italy, marriages among noble families were rarely about love. They were agreements designed to strengthen alliances and secure power. Alexander VI arranged Lucrezia's first marriage when she was only a teenager. Her husband was Giovanni Sforza, a member of the powerful Sforza family of Milan. At first, the marriage seemed like a successful political alliance. But politics in Italy changed quickly. Soon, the Borgias no longer needed the Sforza family as allies. When that happened, the marriage suddenly became a problem. Alexander VI wanted the union ended. The official reason given was that the marriage had never been properly completed. This allowed the church to declare it invalid. But the situation became extremely embarrassing for Giovanni Sforza. In anger, he began spreading shocking accusations about the Borgia family. According to some reports, he claimed that Lucrezia's relationship with her father and brother was improper. These accusations spread rapidly across Italy. Rival families and political enemies repeated the claims again and again. Soon they were being discussed not only in Rome but also in other European courts. However, historians today believe these accusations were most likely part of a bitter political conflict rather than proven facts. Still, the damage to the Borgia reputation had already begun. Meanwhile, Alexander's son Cesare Borgia was becoming one of the most powerful and feared figures in Italy. Originally, Cesare had been placed in the church and made a cardinal, but he was far more interested in politics and military power than religious life. Eventually, he left his position in the church and became a military commander. With the support of his father, Cesare launched campaigns across central Italy. His goal was to create a powerful Borgia state. Cities were conquered. Rivals were defeated. Some leaders who resisted him disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Cesare quickly developed a reputation for both brilliance and cruelty. Even famous political thinkers, like Niccolò Machiavelli, studied his actions closely. Machiavelli later described Cesare as an example of a ruler who understood how power truly worked in the dangerous world of Renaissance politics. While Cesare expanded Borgia influence through military strength, Lucrezia's role continued through marriage alliances. After the end of her first marriage, she was married again, this time to Alfonso of Aragon, a noble connected to the Kingdom of Naples. For a short time, this marriage seemed happier. Some letters from the period suggest that Lucrezia and Alfonso may have genuinely cared for each other. But once again, politics intervened. Alliances shifted. New conflicts appeared between powerful states in Italy. One night Alfonso was attacked by unknown men and badly wounded. Although he survived the first attack, he was later killed under mysterious circumstances. Many people suspected that Cesare Borgia was involved, though clear proof was never found. The event increased the fear surrounding the Borgia family. Stories began to circulate that anyone who stood in the way of their ambitions could disappear. Meanwhile, Lucrezia herself remained at the center of attention. Some people described her as a clever and capable political figure who managed important responsibilities while her father and brother focused on power struggles. Others continued to repeat dark rumors about secret crimes and immoral behavior. In truth, much of Lucrezia's life was controlled by the political ambitions of the men around her. Her marriages were arranged for alliances. Her reputation was shaped by enemies of the Borgia family. As time passed, the line between truth and rumor became more and more difficult to see. What was certain, however, was that the Borgia name had become one of the most controversial in Europe, and as the family reached the height of its power, new tragedies and mysteries would soon push their story even deeper into legend. For a moment, it seemed that the Borgias might reshape the entire political map of Italy. Cesare Borgia had abandoned his role as a cardinal and fully embraced the life of a military leader. With his father's support and alliances with powerful rulers, he began conquering cities that had once been independent. Small states, such as Ramonia and other territories, quickly fell under his control. Many leaders surrendered without resistance because they feared his reputation. Those who resisted often faced harsh consequences. Cesare was known for his intelligence, ambition, and cold political thinking. He believed that power had to be secured quickly and without hesitation. One of the most famous observers of Caesar's actions was Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli met Cesare while serving as a diplomat for the city of Florence. During this time, he carefully watched the way Cesare handled power, alliances, and enemies. Later, Machiavelli wrote about rulers who used strength, strategy, and sometimes cruelty to maintain control. Many historians believe that Cesare Borgia inspired parts of Machiavelli's famous political work. The Prince Caesar's campaigns across Italy were bold and effective. He defeated rival leaders, reorganized territories, and placed loyal governors in charge of newly conquered cities. In some places, local populations even welcomed his rule because he promised stability after years of chaos. But behind the success of these campaigns, danger was always present. Many powerful families feared the growing strength of the Borgia. Noble houses such as the Orsini and Colonna families watched carefully, waiting for an opportunity to weaken their rivals. Meanwhile, rumors about the Borgia court continued to spread across Europe. Visitors returning from Rome told dramatic stories about the luxury of the Vatican under Alexander VI. Lavish banquets, celebrations, and political meetings filled the papal palace. Some guests described the atmosphere as more like a royal court than a religious center. Among these stories, one particular rumor became famous. He described a scandalous event later called the Banquet of Chestnuts. According to some accounts written years later, a strange and controversial celebration took place inside the Vatican. However, historians still debate whether these stories were exaggerated or even invented by enemies of the Borgia family. Many of the descriptions came from writers who strongly disliked the Pope and his court. This makes it difficult to separate truth from propaganda. While these rumors spread, Lucrezia Borgia experienced another major change in her life. After the tragic death of a second husband, she was married for a third time. This time, her husband was Alfonso, the first d'Este, the ruler of the wealthy city of Ferrara. Unlike her previous marriages, this one placed Lucrezia in a powerful and respected position. When she moved to Ferrara, many people there were suspicious of her reputation. The stories about the Borgias had spread widely, and some expected her to be dangerous or immoral. But over time, Lucrezia surprised many of them. She became known for her intelligence, kindness, and interest in culture. She supported artists, poets, and scholars, helping turn Ferrara into an important cultural center during the Renaissance. Letters from that period suggest that she worked hard to prove she was not the villain many people believed her to be. While Lucrezia began building a new life in Ferrara, the political situation in Italy was becoming more dangerous. Cesare Borgia's growing power made many rulers nervous. Foreign powers such as France and Spain were also becoming deeply involved in Italian politics. Wars and alliances shifted quickly, creating an unstable environment. Despite his success, Cesare's power depended heavily on one important factor: the support of his father. As long as Pope Alexander VI remained alive and in control of the church, the Borgia family had enormous influence. But if something happened to the Pope, everything could change overnight. And in the dangerous world of Renaissance politics, fortunes could rise and fall with shocking speed. As enemies gathered and tensions increased across Italy, the fate of the Borgia dynasty began to hang by a fragile thread. For many years, the strength of the Borgia family depended on one man. As long as Pope Alexander VI remained alive and in power, his children enjoyed protection, influence, and wealth. The Vatican gave them political authority that few families in Europe could challenge. But power in Renaissance Italy was always fragile. Alliances changed quickly. Friends could become enemies in a single moment. And when the foundation of power disappeared, everything built upon it could collapse just as quickly. In the summer of 1503, a sudden crisis struck the Borgia family. Pope Alexander VI became seriously ill. At first, many people in Rome believed the Pope would recover. Illness was common in the crowded city, especially during the hot summer months when disease spread. But as the days passed, the Pope's condition became worse. Rumors began to spread through the streets of Rome. Some people whispered that the Pope had been poisoned. Others believed the illness was caused by malaria, which was common in the region at the time. Historians today generally believe that malaria was the most likely cause. But during that period, the sudden illness of powerful figures always created suspicion and dramatic stories. As the Pope lay dying, the future of the Borgia family suddenly became uncertain. His son, Cesare Borgia, was also sick at the same time. Whether he suffered from the same illness or another disease is still debated. What made the situation even more dangerous was the political reality of the papacy. When a pope died, a new pope would be chosen by the College of Cardinals. The new leader of the church might support the previous Pope Salazar. He might support their enemies. For Cesare Borgia, this meant that everything he had built could vanish overnight. In August 1503, the moment finally arrived. Pope Alexander VI died. The death of the Pope immediately changed the political balance of Rome. Many of the families who had feared the Borgias now saw an opportunity. The Orsini, Colonna, and other powerful groups quickly began moving against the weakened Borgia influence. Without his father's protection, Cesare suddenly found himself surrounded by enemies. At the same time, he was still recovering from illness and could not respond with the strength he once had. Cities that had once obeyed him began to rebel. Governors he had placed in power were forced out. Armies that once followed him began to lose confidence. The empire he had built in central Italy began collapsing piece by piece. The next pope, chosen after Alexander VI, did not support the Borgia family. Soon after, another pope was elected pope. Julius II. Julius II had long been an enemy of the Borgias. Instead of protecting Cesare, he began taking back the territories that Cesare had conquered. The lands of Romagna and other regions returned to the control of the Papal States. Cesare Borgia was eventually arrested and forced into exile. For a man who had once commanded armies and controlled cities, the fall was dramatic and humiliating. After several years of imprisonment and escape attempts, Cesare eventually found himself far from Italy. In 1507, he died during a military conflict in Spain, at the age of only 30. His dream of building a powerful Borgia kingdom in Italy had completely collapsed. Meanwhile, Lucrezia Borgia continued her life in Ferrara. Unlike her brother, she managed to survive the fall of the family's power. In Ferrara, she became respected as a duchess and patron of the arts. She supported writers, artists, and musicians, helping the city become an important center of Renaissance culture. Over time, the people of Ferrara began to see her very differently from the frightening stories that once surrounded her name. Yet outside the city, the legend of the Borgias continued to grow darker. Writers, historians, and storytellers repeated the rumors of corruption, poison, and scandal that had followed the family during their rise to power. Some stories described secret crimes and shocking behavior inside the Vatican. Others portrayed the Borgias as symbols of the corruption that critics believed existed within the church during that era. But the truth behind many of these stories remained uncertain. Political enemies, rival families, and dramatic storytellers all contributed to the image of the Borgias as one of the most dangerous and immoral families in European history. By the time the Borgia power collapsed, their reputation had already become legendary, and as the years passed, that legend would only grow larger. The death of Pope Alexander VI in 1503 marked the end of the family's political dominance in Rome. Without the power of the papacy behind them, the Borgias quickly lost their influence across Italy. Cities that once obeyed them returned to other rulers, and many of their former allies quietly distanced themselves from the family. For Cesare Borgia, the fall was especially tragic. Only a few years earlier, he had been one of the most powerful men in Italy. His armies had conquered territories, and many believed he might unite large parts of central Italy under his rule. But once his father died, the political support that protected him vanished. Enemies surrounded him, and the territories he controlled quickly slipped away. Eventually, he was captured and forced into exile. After escaping imprisonment, he traveled to Spain, where he joined military campaigns. In 1507, during a small battle, Cesare Borgia was killed. He was only 31 years old. His dramatic rise and sudden fall made him one of the most fascinating figures of the Renaissance. Writers and historians would later describe him as both brilliant and ruthless a man who understood power better than most rulers of his time. Meanwhile, Lucrezia Borgia lived a very different life. After marrying Alfonso I d'Este, she settled permanently in the city of Ferrara. At first, many people there were suspicious of her. The rumors about the Borgia family had spread across Europe, and some expected her to behave like the dangerous figure described in those stories. But over time, Lucrezia changed many of those opinions. She became known as a thoughtful and capable duchess. She supported artists, poets, and scholars, helping Ferrara grow into an important cultural center during the Renaissance. Writers visited her court, musicians performed there, and the city became famous for its intellectual life. Lucrezia also played an important role in governing the duchy when her husband was away. Letters from that time showed that she handled political decisions carefully and worked to maintain peace and stability in the region. In many ways, the real Lucrezia Borgia seemed very different from the mysterious and dangerous woman described in popular stories. She died in 1519 at the age of 39 after complications during childbirth. even after her death. However, the rumors about the Borgias continued to grow. During the centuries that followed, writers, historians, and dramatists became fascinated by the story of the family. Some described them as symbols of corruption within the Renaissance church. Others portrayed them as villains in dramatic tales filled with poison, betrayal, and dark secrets. Plays, novels, and later films repeated many of these stories, sometimes adding even more dramatic details. Because of this, the Borgia name became surrounded by myth and legend. One reason the story of the Borgias became so famous is that it happened during a time when politics and religion were deeply connected. The Pope was not only a religious leader, but also a political ruler, controlling large territories in Italy. This meant that the actions of the papacy had enormous consequences for both faith and power. Critics of the church often pointed to the Borgias as an example of how corruption could enter religious institutions. At the same time, historians today try to examine the story more carefully. Many accusations made against the Borgias came from their political enemies. Rival families and foreign diplomats sometimes spread rumors to damage their reputation. Because of this, it is not always easy to know which stories are true and which ones were exaggerated or invented. What is certain, however, is that the Borgia family lived during one of the most dramatic periods in European history. The Renaissance was a time of great cultural achievements, artistic discoveries, and intellectual progress. But it was also a time of intense political competition, secret alliances, and ruthless struggles for power. In that world, the Borgias rose quickly, gained enormous influence, and then collapsed just as dramatically. Their story shows how dangerous the pursuit of power could be in Renaissance Italy. It also reminds us that history is often shaped not only by facts, but also by the stories people tell about the past. Even today, more than 500 years later, the names of Alexander VI, Cesare Borgia, and Lucrezia Borgia continue to capture the imagination of historians and storytellers. Their lives remain a mixture of reality and legend.